we talked so much about the deals that were done prior to deadline day, and I thought that it started off really solid. I mentioned on that show that the best case scenario was Juan Soto not being traded. And I thought that because he was traded, it ruined every bit of prospect capital that was going to be returned on Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ. I know a lot of people are upset with them not dealing Wilson Contreras, but I do think that this was a case of the market never evolving for Jed. And we talked a lot on this show about Wilson Contreras and how much he means to the ball club, right? Christopher Morel is a guy who's talked about it in depth, where he's managing and kind of, holding his hand throughout this process of being a major leaguer. Now, none of this is going to show up in prospect capital, right? You're never going to see a Wilson Contreras prospect minus obviously at the end of this, they can send him the qualifying offer and he can turn that down or take it. And it's another year Wilson Contreras at probably between, I think it's 16 and 18 million for his qualifier. And if he rejects it, they get a comp pick, which would be between the 60th and I think like the 90th pick. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the general area that's in. But
it's like competitive balance B, I think, or so, whatever that is. Yeah.
And then that also allows for just underneath $1 million worth to be added to the player pool for them to sign as well, which, as we saw this year, was, heavily needed, considering that they threw Jackson Ferris, close to $3 million just to get him into the building as a freshman. Going to be freshman for college. So, yeah, I think that while everybody's doom and gloom, I do think that if it plays out the right way on Wilson, they're going to be able to have a pick within the top 3 rounds that is going to maybe bring you something back. There will be the player pool money that we're going to be able to talk about and sign some players with that we do sign in free agency. And on the flip side of that as well, there'll be a market maybe for Ian Happ next year. There's a lot of things that kind of put this into perspective, one of which is I do think that the Cubs believe really largely in their outfield prospect depth because they didn't go out and add any to that, and they actually floated Ian Happ out there for anybody to make an offer. And they brought back a lot of pitching. So that was kind of what the focus was, continue on that little run of pitching that they were bringing back. But I do think that if they aren't good again next year, which who knows, they may go out and spend some money and make some noise. It's a possibility. But with that said, I think that letting Ian Happ's market develop a little bit more may be beneficial. He'd be a great trade candidate for the winter meetings, right? It'd be an early full year worth, and you already know he's got a foot out the door at a very reasonable salary, and they'll have a full year to lock him up, whichever team wants to take on Ian Happ as their outfielder. I'll say this: I don't know much about the returns that they got. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet of trying to, but it does seem like they've prioritized guys who throw hard. And I think that's a major plus because for so long they didn't target that very much at all in the system. They really targeted guys who threw kind of soft tossers, who threw strikes. And we talked about, the 2021 season being like a case study in terms of everybody else had these hard-throwing right and left-handers. The Cubs kind of had some put-the-ball-in-play contact pitchers that, tried to keep you off balance, and that was a dumpster fire type of season from the starting rotation. So I think that they've kind of realized they needed to pivot on that pretty quick.
You don't want to relive the Zach Davies days?
No, absolutely not. And I don't think that anybody who listens to this show wants to either, but – all things considered, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that the biggest miss of the trade deadline was not trading Wilson Contreras or Ian Happ. I think it's not finding somebody to take on guys like Patrick Wisdom or not Rafael Furcal, Rafael Ortega.
I take him in his prime.
Yeah, right. And Swindell. I mean, those are the guys that I think have run their course here. And I'm just so surprised on Wisdom. Wisdom's the one that I just, out of all of them, did not get. I can understand there's no market for Ortega. I can understand if there's no market for Frank. But, I mean, Wisdom has played himself into a 20 home run season already. And bats like that coming off the bench or, in your DH spot, they don't hurt you. And I don't understand why in the DH type of league that we have now that he wasn't, floated out there and given, the chance to play on a team maybe that's contending, or he's an extra at bat at the end of the game. There's not as much as that anymore now that you're not substituting pitchers in and out and there's no pitcher spot. But, I mean, it's still valuable to have a deep bench when you never know what's going to happen in terms of injuries in the second half. And a guy like that who can semi-play around the diamond, he could play third and first, and that's kind of a positive in terms of, what he can bring to your ball club. But, yeah, you're absolutely right. The fact of all of it is that they missed a huge opportunity to kind of move some of these pieces that are roadblocking a lot of their prospects. And I think because of that, we're not going to get the full look at, Jed said this morning at Brennan Davis or, some of those guys in AAA this year. I really don't think we're going to – maybe Mervis gets a call up because he's hitting so well. But there's just so many guys that are in that infield. It's kind of packed. So I don't think that we're going to get much of a call up for the September. I think there'll be some of them, some of the guys that are the tweener 4A type guys that we've seen come up and down for the rest of the season. But I think that they're going to give guys another full off season of saving their arms. So I don't think we'll see a lot of pitchers. I think that they'll value that rest and they'll value that time in the pitch lab, as we've talked about in depth, on this show. But yeah, man, I agree with you. I think that I listened to a little bit of your guys' show last night, and you guys hit on a lot of great points in terms of what they, were bringing back in prospects and, what the miss on not dealing Willie and Ian. But I do think that while a lot of teams or a lot of fans today were upset about that and kind of still, getting through the hangover of not trading, both of those guys, I think that it does put into perspective at least maybe a third road that we didn't see so far.